So, hi all. I'd like to welcome you to our today's tutorial. My name is Elmar Löffler. I'm working for the Theben company in Germany, and hopefully you will have some interesting moments together with me in discovering details and figures to our new KNX RF flush-mounted actuators talking data secure. So on this slide, I want to give you a general view about the weighting of this threat. So secure becomes more and more interest and in, let's say, intelligent buildings, and we take care about that. So our new IP router, which supports IP secure, is available in a few days. So this is one of the part of the backbone we support here, as well as our flush mounted actuators, switching, dimming, shading, and heating are supporting data secure. And the term of today, our flush mounted actuators talking RF secure, which are currently unique in the market. Nobody else currently can offer solutions like we have RF secure. And as well, the new products which we introduce to the market, which we launch into the market this year 2020, is the Ion series, which is a push button series and a multifunction display, which is data secure or data ready. And as well, the brand new sensor, present sensor. We gave him the name T-Pixar because it's a totally new technology, not PIR based. It is a contrast sensor, camera based, and as well, these brand new products supports secure of the KNX association. These two new products, the Ion series and as well the T-Pixar sensor, we intend to introduce you in two separate tutorials in the next couple of weeks. So all these, the IP router, the flush mounted actuators, the flush mounted actuators RF secure, and these brand new products, all of them are supporting KNX Secure. So you see, again, the weighting of Theben on this threat. I'd like to introduce you, first of all, some few details in regards of the RF technology and the things which has to be considered. And first of all, if you want to set up RF line or integrate, you want to integrate RF control flush mounted actuators. So first of all, you have to create a new line, which is RF. So that means in the medium settings of the ETS, you have to choose RF. And in the RF line, then you can integrate, first of all, a media coupler, which is essentially for the communication between twisted pair, which is here, for instance, and the RF based, in our case, actuators, for instance. There is no chance at all, for instance, to integrate a media coupler, which is talking RF, into a standard twist and pair line. No go, doesn't work. So what you have to know, so you discover here in this slide here, so there is a specific icon which tells you this is a RF based component, item, product, however, and this is important to distinguish because if you haven't chosen the right line, so you can't integrate like that, like mentioned. And what you discover here probably, just this small blue icon, Yeah, it is a little bit tiny, but okay, it is like it is. So this gives you a feedback that this product, this specific product, you probably have set to secure communication. Then this icon pops up. What does it mean? So you can operate such kind of RF communicating products unsecure, like before, like all of these, let's say, DIN-array based KNX products or however. And you can choose as well. So if such a product, if he has the features, he has the abilities, you can set this product to secure. So then you don't have to care about any kind of security, because then the communication is secure. And for this purpose, you need to consider some specific things. So that means, first of all, the entire project has to be password protected. So sorry for that I have here German screens, but I think you will easily find in your ETS the reasonable English slides. So first of all, you have to give it a specific password which is related to this project. And second of this, you need finally a FTSK code. Yeah. What is FTSK code? FTSK code is finally a badge which you find on all of the appliances which are able to support data secure. Because this FTSK code means factory device key code. So that means this code you need for the first initial setup to integrate such secure communicating to the KNX system. And this FTSK code, so factory device setup code, so you can type in either here this specific product specific key, or you can do the following. You discover here the QR code, and if you want to do it in a, let's say, fast way, you just take this is a surface flush mounted actuator, you just hold it in front of the camera, and then the QR code reads finally the FTSK code. So you haven't to type it in manually in the ETS, or you can read the FTSK code which is printed here, and you can type in manually. And if so, then you can set finally this product you want to communicate safe, secure, or unsecure. But this is mandatory for secure talking products in a KNX system. And then finally, you get automatically created a fabric code, so that means a company code. So you see here, this is a physical address in which line, which area, and so on. This appliance is, and this is a specific encrypted code which identifies this product finally. When you set this product to secure, so you discover here in your project list this icon, this protection shield, or however we like to name it. And this tells you exactly, so this appliance here, and this in our case, it is a switching activator 1-volt RF secure talking, and this is set to secure communication. So that means secure communication, you can't monitor any kind of communication without this factory code. So that means there is no chance to open a bus monitor or the group monitor, for instance, and to read what the device is sending or receiving, however, without this specific, let's say, key. If the key is a part of your project, no problem at all. If you open this project and you does not have these original keys of the several products, you aren't able to read any commands, values, or whatever. So essentially. So in regards of, let's say, the wiring, so here a small, let's say a small overview about how the principle finally is. You have here the twisted pair, which could be data secure if it's IP based. So, and here first time you see now, you discover now the so-called media coupler. The media coupler is a kind of a gateway which links the RF area with the twisted pair area. Supported by the bus, you power this media coupler, and the media coupler sends on the frequency of 868.3 megahertz the telegrams coming from the twisted pair, transmitting to the flush mounted actuators, for instance, below in your system. RF secure, I talked about. So what are, let's say, kind of hard facts? Hard facts on the actuators. So that means we have here a remote which is about 30 meters, and these 30 meters I have to tell you something. So this is more or less in a free field. You know, depends on the physical structure of a building, the thickness of the walls, the material of the walls. So you have a kind of, let's say, filtering or reducing this remote distance. So lightweight construction, for instance, depends on the walls which are put left and right side of this metal structure. So it depends on the material. You have some filtering, some losses in the remote. If you have walls with additional insulation, for instance, a thickness of a wall, meanwhile in Europe, Germany, so we talk about 35, minimum 35 centimeters plus insulation. So there's a difference between such a wall and a wall which is just 12 or 13 centimeter of a wall of the interior structure of a building. So in all of these, let's say materials, the thickness and so on has a certain impact on these remote distance finally. Yeah, which has to be considered, sorry to say. So, but the good thing is finally, you have options to integrate one or two of these media couplers, and these media couplers can act as repeaters. So that means you can use this kind of communication and repeat the communication in areas of a building which are probably not so ideal, not so good to reach finally the final signal. And then finally, so I will show you later on, we have some, let's say, binary inputs which give you some options, but for that a few bit more in a couple of minutes. So in regard of the powering of the actuators, so I have to tell you the following. So that means all these flush mounted actuators, switching, dimming, shutters and blinds and heating, due to the fact that they are communicating via remote. So they need power because from the bus side, from the KNX side, they can't be powered. So that means we need here 230 volt to give them the power to operate. So a glance and a zoom on this product. We see here, we discover here. So simple things like, let's say, the programming knob, and the ring around is the LED, which gives you a feedback if the flush mounted actuator is currently in a programmable mode. Then you discover on the right hand side here, there is a connection cable which gives you binary input, in total 2. So you can just plug in here and then apply here to push buttons, but furthermore on the next slide. And you discover here the screw terminals which are prepared to power the appliance, and you see here the output to the load, for instance. A few words to these 4 icons here. So S means S mode, it is the communication in KNX. X means it's according to the normative regulation of the KNX Association, tells you it is a product which is talking secure or able to communicate data secure, and this is the normative standard or the the expression for this RF communicating product finally. So furthermore, okay, probably on the next slide. So that means in regards of the size, which is essentially because most of these flush mounted actuators are inboxed in such a junction box and depends on the size. So each millimeter is important for the installer because of the cabling, the wiring, and so on. So due to that, we try to keep these appliances as small as possible. You discover one terminal here, which is a screw terminal, and we decided in comparison to other manufacturers which are offering some flush mounted actuators, we decided to keep here terminals because it is better in regards of the space in the junction box. If you have here some cables and you have to link the cables finally to the final wiring here into the structure, so what you need dominoes or these Wago terminals finally to link two cables together, and this takes space. And due to that, we decided finally we skip this and you apply directly the cabling here. It's better for the spacing in the junction box finally. Junction box ideal would be a junction box like that with, how we can say it, with a special covering or partition in the junction box because on this side, on the terminals, again, back to here we have the potential of 230 volt. And on this side, we have here, more or less low voltage, more or less in brackets. So we need in general a certain partition. Could be a solution like that. So in regards of the wiring, a few bit more details you see here. So how the wiring can look like. So neutral, we link to here. Here probably our load, which is linked to the contact, and we have a potential free contact. So that means you can apply here line 1, and here could be, for instance, line 2. So it doesn't matter. So it's for the electrician quite comfortable. And what you discover here finally, and this is remarkable, I would like to say. So here we are talking about 600 watts and 600 watts of LEDs. So everybody of you guys experienced know what does it mean to drive 600 watts of LEDs directly with such a small actuator for flush mounting. On the right hand side, you discover here these two binary inputs. You can, for instance, apply directly push buttons or window contacts or whatever. And with these small socket here, you can plug it in, and that's it. You can communicate with it. What is essentially an important, which I want to highlight, and this is, let's say, a feature, an important feature out of my point of view for all of our flush mounted actuators, this overload protection. What does it mean? So in case, for instance, let's assume, so we have a dimmer, and the dimmer discovers, or the inside of the dimmer discovers, the temperature is rising, the temperature inside of the electronic is rising due to overloading or whatever. So then the electronic inside is starting to reduce the load, to drive down, finally till switching off. After, let's say, cooling down, recovering, the component, the actuator, tries again on its own to restart, to come to his, let's say, former position, former value. And this is something which essentially, I think, in terms of, let's say, protection against this calorific potential. And I think important. So, and all these features, external inputs, and these, let's say, thermal protection these features are inbuilt in all of these actuators when we talk about switching, dimming, shutters and blinds, and heating. So, in this case, I want to have a specific scope on the application settings, and the application setting tells me you discover here this small actuator gives you plenty of options what you can do with, what you can adjust, which options and applications you can use finally. Default is always not activated. And if you want to have, for instance, logic links or so, you have to activate it and then they pop up here and you can do the setup accordingly. So when we talk about the switching and we open the switching, you discover here it's not just switching. We have this on-off delay, which could be, for instance, interesting for areas of bathrooms and so on. Function pulse could be, for instance, for outdoor lights with a delay time off, for instance, or staircase function with a kind of forewarning. Forewarning means you get when the delay time is elapsing, so you get a flashing as a kind of forewarning. So now in a few seconds the light will turn off, or you can use it as well, so this actuator as well as a flashing actuator for a kind of advertisement or what advertisement lights or however. And probably you discover there is another option, not just switching, exceed a threshold. And some of you probably experienced who did work many years with us. So you know probably what does it mean, the exceeded threshold. For all of those who haven't experienced this function, I want to explain in a few words. So that means with this exceeded threshold, we offer different, let's say, data points. And you can affiliate, for instance, a temperature probe or CO2 probe or or brightness sensor, for instance, and you can set finally the threshold. And when the threshold is exceeded, for instance, then the actuator turns on, then the light switches off, or however the situation finally is and however it is configured. When it comes finally to the binary inputs or binary input, which you can apply here. So we have here different options, the switching option and dimming, blinds, and so on, and depends on how the settings are. So you can adjust, for instance, if in this case here, when we talk about the dimming, so here you can adjust or set if it's a one button operation or one of these binary input is for on and brighter over, and the second binary input is, for instance, then to be adjusted darker and darker off, for instance. So it's a question how you position finally, or if you want to apply to this actuator push button interface for blinds control or for rollers control or awnings, however. So here you can adjust as well in the settings. So what are the finally functions which are here to be used? So basically, as a default, you get this binary input or this actuator set that the binary input switches directly. So that means without any programming, and you affiliate, you link on these binary inputs here, just a push button. With this push button, when we talk about switching, you can on off without any programming. If it is a shutters and blinds control, so with this push button here, you can up or can down operate, let's say the rollers or the blinds, however. Or when, for instance, we have a dimmer and we have external push buttons, and so you can do the dimming up or the dimming down. With any programming, you can do it just or can use it just as a testing. Yeah. So I think it is really comfortable and really essentially. And in the communication, finally, you discover that you find here the threshold on percentage. So that means this is this threshold dependent control, for instance. You discover here, for instance, these scenarios which can be controlled directly on the actuators by sending a command or sending a number, however. So this can be done directly on this application. The input 2. I think the input 2 is remarkable, and you have to distinguish. You see here, input 1, there is no triangle which you can open. So that means here we have a direct switching. You see here. So here we have a triangle, and the triangle is open because input 2 I have set to temperature. So that means here I can link to this communication object a temperature probe, and so I can convert the temperature which is sent from the binary input and send it to the KNX bus system, the KNX structure, to give it to a heating actuator, or probably if you take a heating actuator flush mounted on its own, so you have one of the smallest heating actuators in the market on its own. But this you will see later on in a specific slide. All in all, we have, so you see there are a lot of, let's say, benefits, a lot of things which has to be considered, which with abilities. One thing at that stage I have to announce, because of we have no basic insulation in these flush mounted actuators. So that means you apply here 230 volt, and if you link here a push button or so there is a potential on these external inputs, on these binary inputs. So my recommendation is finally unplug this connector here. First of all, link the push button or the window contact or whatever, and then plug it in and done. But you have to know there is potential on the binary input due to the missing basic insulation. But it's not a real disadvantage in terms of it is a, let's say it, or let's name it, problem of Theben. It is a general problem for all of the manufacturers of flush mounted actuators. But we are doing the following. In the stage of the delivery, we put an insulating plastic upon these wires at the end to avoid that, if not affiliated, that somebody gets hurt by potential which is coming from the circuit board here. So due to that, my recommendation is, first of all, affiliate the push button or the window contact or whatever, and then plug it in the actuator and done. Things which has to be known. Back coming to this, let's say, temperature probe. So here is an example, this small, tiny temperature probe with the order number 9070496. So this can be, for instance, affiliated to input 2. So that means just in input 2, you have the option to activate here temperature input, and then you can take the room temperature, give it to the flush mounted actuator, and a flush mounted actuator sends this temperature value, for instance, via remote to the media coupler and then to the twisted pair or to the IB backbone to the reasonable temperature heating actuator, for instance, in order to control the room temperature. If there is a need to do a setup, so that means the measured temperature differs a few bit to the real temperature, always a matter where installed. So there is as well an option to do a setup of these, let's say, value, which is integrated here with a binary input. No problem at all. But it's not just the only sensor, this small and fancy one. We have a floor sensor for underfloor heating, for instance, or a wall sensor, which gives an IP rating of 65. So whatever is convenient, take it. Important is, take it from us. So let's focus a few bit more on the dimming or the dimming actuator for flush installation, flush mounting installation. So here, what is of interest? First of all, this flush-mounted dimmer actuator is ideal for LED dimming. So we developed him especially to have a really good quality of the LED dimming. And what you discover here the 250 watts just LED dimming. And again, all of you experienced with LED dimming and so on, you know what I mean. For such a small appliances, 250 watts dimming LED is a tremendous high value, which is remarkable finally. And when we, Theben, print on our appliances 250 watt, then we can. Some of our competitors have slightly different values, but they run in a really short time into temperature overload or switch off or are damaged. When we print here 250, we can 250. In some, let's say, unlikely events, we discovered that depending on the LEDs, circuit board which is in the LED, or circuit board is mostly called in the market as the driver. So the drivers are different in LED lights, and some of these drivers are probably not that qualitative wise not that good. And finally you discover, or you could discover, especially during the really dark nights, that a light is really slightly lighting up. But this is not that nice. This is really not that comfortable. And this is not let's say, a fault of our dimming actuator. It is based on the driver. And to avoid such, let's say, not really comfortable function or side effect, we offer since a couple of days this kind of accessory, the 9070825, and this accessory here is a kind of, let's say, basic load which has to be linked, which has to be affiliated parallel to the load, and then this problem of slightly glimming or lighting up is gone forever. Okay, let's have a look on the application setting of this flush mounted dimmer. So you discover here a huge variety of, let's say, application settings. I just take one or two of them, and because, again, some of you experienced with our products, you feel really comfortable because all of these application settings are acquainted to you, and you know that this is more or less the application of the famous DM2T, for instance, or the DM4/2T, and they are really qualitative wise excellent. And so we took most of the application settings of these, let's say, big and famous dimmers, LED dimmers from the market for our new flush mounted dimmers, talking RF secure. So I want to pick a small function which is called soft dimming, and this soft dimming I mostly use in projects when it comes to let's say a corridor light or so. So I really, I'm absolute a fan of it. So when you enter a corridor or a staircase and the light switches on immediately, so from 0 to 100, so from here it is not really comfortable. It is glaring. It is, it's not that nice. And in my case, I'm really a favorite of that. So I use a dimmer with a soft switching on. So that means here we can adjust within 4 seconds. The dimmer runs up to, let's say, predefined value. In this case, for instance, to 80%. Then as long as a presence sensor in the corridor gives a trigger to the dimmer, remains the light on. This is the delay time. If nobody's there anymore, then the delay time elapses, and within, let's say, 5 minutes, it's quite long here, but in 5 minutes, so then we have a slightly fading out of this light, and 15 seconds here, and then slightly in 15 seconds, the dimmer runs down and gives me indication, okay, if I'm somewhere in a corner which is not detected by the presence center, so move or hurry up and just out of this area here, for instance. So quite comfortable way, softly dimming on, stay on to a specific brightness and softly fading out. This is a comfortable way to do light control, especially in corridors or in staircases. As well, I want to, let's say, scratch a little bit on the terms of the scenarios. So we support as well different scenarios, and you can call it up by a scenario number. You can give each scenario a specific value. So for watching TV, for listen music or whatever, or for some events, however. And these scenario number can be called up by just this communication object 74. So you give here a number, or you can send a 0, you call up scenario 1, and if you want to save the scenario, you send as well on the same communication object here the value 128, so you can do individually save a new scenario configuration. So let's have a slight look on the shutters or the roller actuators. So the JU1 RF. So first of all, so I like to announce or to highlight. So we have here a kind of let's say ventilation, additional ventilation, and teach-in mode and heating and cooling support. And on these things, I want to put my focus upon. And first of all, again, so here the overview about these, let's say, settings, about let's say the settings, what you want to do, the blinds, rollers or awnings, different application. This we will focus immediately. Sun protection we will focus immediately, and so on. So first of all, when we do the sun protection, for instance, what does it mean, sun protection? So probably you might first of all insist sun protection. Okay, it's shading. It's when it is bright enough, the rollers or the blinds run down. Yeah, slightly yes, slightly no. So the thing is finally that this sun protection finally gives you heating or cooling support. Heating and cooling support, so that means we have here the situation, for instance, if the condition in the room, the temperature condition in the room is not met, it's too cold, so the heating is currently active, but nobody present in the room, but outside the lights, the sun is brightly shining. So then this infrared light from the sun, from the natural daylight, supports you heating up the room. If somebody enters the room, detected by a presence sensor, for instance, so the sun supports us in heating up the room, and and so it is an active part to save energy finally. Vice versa. So for instance, we need for the hot summer seasons, we need a kind of cooling support. And this does mean finally, so if outside the sun is heavily shining, inside the room is quite warm or slightly overheated, nobody present, so the blinds run totally down, close totally, keep the warmth, keep the sun out in order not to heat up the room so tremendous. When somebody enters the room, then the slats open, lift a little bit, depends on the presets, and these slats of the blinds are adjusted by the position of the sun. So active heating and cooling support from an intelligent shutters and blinds actuator. But this is a specific term, and for this specific purpose here, we offer a new tutorial. We call it the Smart Room KNX. It is a specific tutorial which is available in a couple of days. So, and then when it comes to, let's say, the adjustment, so the run times of rollers or blinds or awnings, however, so if you do it in a, let's say, single mode, so that means you have single windows, single doors to the outside, to the garden, however, with different sizes. So there is no way around, there is no workaround how to do it in an easy way. So you have to type in the ETS, for instance, the values of the running time for the rollers or for the blinds. But if you have a facade which let's say like here with different blinds but with the same size to precise it, so then you have the option finally to do it in one shot. So that means you have here the option, you have here a master. This master sends his running time to the slaves, and the slaves here are set to receive the value. You start the teach-in by sending a bit object, and you stop the teach-in by a 0 command. And this running time, which you do manually, so you press on a push button, the blinds run down, then the time is counting. When you're at the bottom end, you stop the drive, and then this time between the upper position and the lower position, this time is finally shared, sent to the slaves in your project. And depends on how the setting finally is in your project. You have a common up, common down, so that means you can drive all of these together up, together down, or in a separate, let's say, operation, however you like it. So let's have a look on the heating actuator, flush mounted. So basically what is important to know, so this small fancy heating actuator slash heating controller is good enough to drive directly 4 of our thermal actuators, thermal valves, 230 volt based. Depends on the setting. This actuator can act as a heating actuator. So what does it mean? He requires the temperature from the temperature controller, and it just acts according to the degree of the highest degree of the controller. Or you send just a temperature, or you receive just a temperature. I'd like to say this in this way. I receive a temperature, I link this room temperature, for instance, to a communication object, and this actuator in brackets can act as a heating controller, and so supports heating and cooling if required, and as well is equipped with 2 external inputs, one to switch, to dim, for blinds, however, and the I2 optional as the gate, as the input for a temperature probe. All of them are talking IP secure. So you see here the setting. Here you choose heating actuator. Again, then you need a room temperature controller to adjust your desired temperature remotely, or you choose heating controller, and then you get on the communication side an object which is external temperature, and this external temperature probably you can get from one step back from this external input here from a temperature probe. So if you have affiliated or linked a temperature probe, so how you can adjust or how you can set the control values. So then you adjust the control values from the ETS side. They are just to be modified by probably a visualization. If you have some in your project, then you can probably override or modify your desired set point, and the room temperature controller gives you the reasonable value. So just an example, input 1 could be a window contact, so that means setting could be if window contact open, so you lock the heating activities so that let's say the warmth does not escape through the open window. And input 2, for instance, could be actual value of a room temperature input, so a small temperature probe. If there is any, let's say, difference between the measured temperature of the room and the real current temperature in the room, so there is in the event of need to recalibrate, so then you have here the option in a specific setting, so to do a temperature calibration can give an offset up or down, so plus or minus is possible. Another interesting function is finally the support of the heating pump control. So that means you have here the option in the event of the value is greater than 0 degrees. So the valve is slightly opened, So then you can give a bit command to an actuator, for instance, and this actuator finally drives the heating pump, brings the warm water into the heating tubes. And if the heating value or the activating value is 0, so then the heating pump stops after, for instance, a delay 10 minutes, however. So an efficient way how to operate and to do energy saving. This slide here shows you a certain abilities finally. So how to fix this temperature probe. Here you see the actuator, and you discover here in the junction box there is plenty of space, easy to wire, easy to install here. You see there's plenty of space around, and here we have a temperature probe. You discover here a sticker, or here you see better. It's a sticker which with a small fancy paper upon. If you remove it, then you can stick it here, for instance, under this kind of cover. And then from the surface of this cover, you take the temperature, send it via the binary input, the input 2, to the heating actuator or the heating controller. And this is the solution finally of the smallest heating controller and heating room temperature controller in the market currently. And this surface flush mounted, flush mounted, available, and as well RF secure available. Same size, same application, same temperature probe, and done. And again, talking secure, data secure. Yeah, or you put it somewhere, somehow, underneath such kind of a flap. You have here, as an example, a plug. And you have a neutral cover, and you can stick this temperature probe here on this cover as well. So you can hide it underneath such combination here as well. So it's up to you how you want to operate and how you want to use it. Yeah, now we come more to this, let's say, media coupler, to this really interesting tool, which is let's say the gateway finally between the KNX world, so the twisted pair world, which has to be linked here. The KNX twisted pair powers finally the media coupler, and the media coupler on its own sends on the frequency of 868.3 the telegrams to the remote operating actuators, or receives on the same frequency the feedback communication, for instance, from the actuators. However, you will discover here on this area here there are LEDs behind, which lights up from time to time when there is a telegram incoming or outgoing, however, and as well there is an indicator so about, let's say, the quality of the transmission of the remote. This media coupler supports finally the so-called long frame communication, and the long frame communication is especially required to have a kind of rapid downloading, so you can communicate really in a short period of time. And this is essentially, especially when it comes to RF communication, important to know. Important as well, so this media coupler can operate on its own, and you discover here in the setting of the media coupler you can activate the media coupler as repeater. So you have to put the dot here on enable, so then the media coupler operates as a repeater, refreshes if you have 2 or 3 of them in a project, so they refresh the telegrams incomings or outgoing finally. Yeah, this chart here gives a rough overview about the technical specs, so I will skip upon this, or over this, sorry, because I think this you can read on its own if you watch again this video a second time, however. And it comes to the end more or less now, so I just want to resume a little bit. So what are the essentials? What are the important things to know about? So we have here the standards. So we have here the dimmers, okay, which is optimized for LED dimming. We have here teach-in of the runtimes, which is something specific for the shutters and blinds actuator. We have additional ventilation, which allows you to do the ventilation. So it depends on the positioning of the window. Then the rollers run to a specific position, for instance. We have extremely high security in terms of encrypted communication, and so which is common, which is standard in our Theben product portfolio. We have zero cross switching in all of our actuators, which switch loads, especially LED loads, in order to have a really high capacity of switching. And we have here as well some which is important for us. We have these remote secure, so that means data secure remote. And currently, none of our competitors in the market can offer some, let's say, flush mounted actuators, remote, talking, data secure. This is something which is remarkable and which is something which we need to know and which we have to talk to the clients finally. What you need to know for all of these actuators, the temperature sensor can be integrated, can be connected, but just on input 2. The cable can be, let's say, extended up to 15 meters. But care about, let's say, you have to have a specific insulation finally, because you know it's not potential free. But you can extend it, so which gives you a certain, let's say, flexibility. And in regards to the security, we guarantee that we can data secure. This is something which is important for you to know. So anything to add? No? Thank you so much for listening, and hopefully see you next time.